Friends forever? Yes, friends forever.
They were 5 and 7 years old when they made a promise that neither of them fully understood. Friends forever? She asked, extending her tiny pinky finger, her gold bracelet catching the soul sunlight. Forever, he said, and wrapped his pinky around hers. She didn't know his father was losing everything. He didn't know her mother was famous everywhere. They only knew that talking to each other felt like breathing for the first time. Welcome to Black Silk Stories, the home of Afro-Korean stories that hit different. Subscribe, drop a comment, and do not go anywhere. This is only the beginning. The school courtyard of Hanguk International Academy sat between two worlds. On one side, the main building, floor-to-ceiling glass, steel bones, the kind of architecture that announced quietly but firmly that ordinary children did not study here. On the other side, a garden of carefully maintained cherry trees that bloomed pink every spring and dropped their petals like confetti over the stone pathways below. And in the middle of it all, one wooden bench. It was not the most impressive bench. It had no gold trim, no designer label, no famous architect behind its construction. It was simply old and solid and warm in the afternoon sun. But it was the bench where everything began. Mitchell Britt found it on her third day. She was 5 years old, dressed in a white cashmere dress with pearl button detailing along the collar and cuffs, white stockings, and small white leather Mary Janes with a single gold buckle on each foot. Her hair was in 2 puff buns secured with gold silk ribbons that her mother had tied herself that morning in their penthouse on the 42nd floor of the Hanamdong Tower. Her gold bracelet, a gift from her mother engraved with the words, "You are enough" on the inside, sat on her left wrist. She sat on the bench alone. Not because no one wanted to sit with her. Several children had already tried. But Mitchell was not interested in children who spoke to her carefully, like she was a glass thing. She wanted someone who spoke to her like she was a person. She opened her lunchbox, packed by their private chef, containing a small container of jollof rice her mother had specifically requested alongside the Korean side dishes, and began to eat with the quiet dignity of someone twice her age. That was when she heard it. A sound like someone trying very hard not to cry. She looked to her left. 3 feet away, half hidden behind the trunk of the nearest cherry tree, was a boy. He was older than her. She could tell by the way he stood straighter, with that particular stiffness children develop when they are trying to look fine. He was wearing a fitted navy wool blazer over a crisp white shirt, dark tailored trousers, and polished black Oxford shoes. His hair was neatly parted. Everything about him was assembled perfectly. Except his eyes. His eyes were doing something his outfit could not fix. Mitchell studied him for exactly 4 seconds. Then she said, "You can sit here if you want." The boy looked at her sharply, like she had said something offensive. "I am not crying," he said. "I did not say you were," Mitchell replied calmly, spooning a small portion of jollof rice into her mouth. He stared at her. She did not stare back. She just moved slightly to the left on the bench, making room, and continued eating. After a long moment he sat down. His name was Kong Nari. He was 7 years old, and he had been standing behind that cherry tree for 11 minutes trying to decide whether to call his father, who would not answer, or his mother, who no longer lived in the same house. He sat in silence for a while. Mitchell let him. She had already decided she liked him because he did not immediately start talking just to fill the air. She respected that. "What are you eating?" he finally asked. "Jollof rice," she said. "Do you want some?" He hesitated. "It is not spicy," she added. "My mom told the chef mild because I am still 5. Something flickered across his face. Almost a smile. "I am 7, he said. "I can handle spicy." "Okay." She handed him the fork. "Then try the spicy version next time." "Next time." She said it so naturally, like it was already decided. Like the bench was already theirs. He took a small bite. Chewed slowly. His eyes changed. "This is good," he said with genuine surprise. "I know," Mitchell said simply. And that was how it started. By the end of that first week, the bench had a system. Mitchell arrived first, always. She was a morning person, bright-eyed and already fully present by the time the school bell rang for the midday break. She would arrange her lunchbox, smooth her dress. That week it had been a blush pink wool pinafore dress over a cream turtleneck, accessorized with a delicate rose gold chain and matching rose gold hair clips along her puff buns. And wait. Nari arrived exactly 3 minutes later every single time. His outfits were always precise. A charcoal blazer one day, a deep burgundy wool coat the next, always paired with perfectly pressed trousers and those polished Oxfords that somehow never scuffed despite him being 7 years old and occasionally kicking pebbles on the way to the bench when he thought no one was watching. Mitchell watched. She noticed everything. "Your shoes are clean again," she said on Friday of that week. "I clean them every morning," Nari said, sitting down. "By yourself?" A small pause. "Yes." Mitchell looked at him. "Where is your mom?" The question landed softly because she asked it softly. Not with the weight children sometimes use when they sense something painful and press on it out of curiosity. Mitchell asked it the way she asked everything, directly but gently. Like she genuinely wanted to know and would handle the answer with care. Nari was quiet for a moment. "She left," he said. 3 months ago. "Do you miss her?" "Yes." "Does your dad know you miss her?" Nari turned to look at her then. Really look at her. She was 5 years old, eating a small piece of teok she had traded with a classmate for part of her sandwich, completely unbothered by the weight of what she had just asked. "My dad is busy," he said carefully. "My mom is busy too," Mitchell said. "But she always knows when I am sad. Even on the phone." "Your mom is not here?" "She is here now. But sometimes she travels." Mitchell paused. "She is an actress. And a CEO. So she travels a lot. But she calls me every single night. Even from different countries." Nari absorbed this. "My dad calls," he said, quieter now. "But he sounds tired." "Because of his business?" Nari went very still. "How do you know about his business?" Mitchell shrugged one small shoulder. "I listen. When my mom is on the phone at night, I listen. She talked about your dad once. She said he built something extraordinary." The word landed on Nari like warm light. Extraordinary. His father. Kang Tae-ho. She said that. "Yes." Mitchell looked at him steadily. "So why does he look so tired?" Kang Tae-ho was 41 years old and looked, at that particular moment in his life, like a man carrying a building on his shoulders. He was tall, the kind of tall that filled a room without trying. His face was sharp-boned and serious, the face of a man who had built his automotive company, KT Motors, from a single workshop in Incheon into one of Korea's most promising electric vehicle manufacturers. He wore his suits the way powerful men wear them, like armor, like identity. That evening he sat in his office on the 38th floor of the KT Motors headquarters in Gangnam, in a midnight blue double-breasted suit, crisp white shirt with the top button undone, his silver cufflinks catching the glow of the city outside his floor-to-ceiling windows. The spreadsheets on his desk told a story he did not want to read. The Aria project, KT Motors' most ambitious electric vehicle launch, had failed. Not catastrophically, not publicly, but quietly, expensively, in the way that failures are sometimes worse when only the people closest to you know about them. 3 lead investors had pulled out. 2 more were watching carefully. The banks were patient but not infinitely so. And Soo-yeon, his wife of 9 years, had looked at the man he had become in the storm of it all and decided she did not recognize him anymore. She had left with her sister to Busan. They communicated through lawyers now, mostly about Nari's schedule. "Nari." Tae-ho reached for his phone. It rang twice before a small voice answered. "Appa, Appa." "Hey." His voice changed instantly, the boardroom fell away. "Did you eat?" "Yes. My friend shared her food with me again." Tae-ho blinked. "Friend?" "Mitchell. She sits on the bench. She always has good food and she lets me have some." "Mitchell," Tae-ho repeated slowly. Something about the name was familiar in a way he could not immediately locate. "Is she Korean?" "No. She is American. But she lives here now. Her mom is famous." And she said, Nari paused. "Appa." She said her mom thinks you built something extraordinary. Tae-ho sat very still. "She said that." "Her mom did." Mitchell heard her on the phone. A long silence stretched between father and son across the city. "Nari," Tae-ho said finally, "this friend of yours, take care of that friendship." "I know, Appa." She already said, "Friends forever." "Did she?" "Yes. She made me do the pinky thing." Tae-ho almost smiled. "Almost. Okay. Go to sleep. I will be home by 9. You said 8 yesterday." "I know. I am sorry." "It is okay." A small pause. "Appa, are you going to be okay?" The question from a 7-year-old boy in perfectly pressed pajamas asking his father the question the father had no clean answer to. Yes, Taeho said. Because what else do you say to your son? I am going to be okay. He hung up and looked at the city for a long time. Rekhyul Brit did not arrive anywhere quietly. Not because she was loud. Rekhyul was actually one of the most composed women in any room she entered. But she had the kind of presence that reorganized the air around her. People stood differently when she walked in. Conversations paused. Heads turned without meaning to. She was 34 years old, a Black American woman who had built her name first as an actress, 3 award seasons, 2 global campaigns, 1 iconic film that still lived on streaming platforms with a 96% rating, and then, quietly and brilliantly, as the CEO of Sable, her own luxury lifestyle and brand influence company that had restructured the way Korean and global luxury brands thought about Black consumers. She had brought Mitchell to Seoul for a 2-year residency, while she led Sable's Asian expansion. That evening she was in the living room of their Hanamdong penthouse, seated on the cream-curved sofa in a deep emerald silk robe with gold trim, her hair in a loose protective style pinned at the nape of her neck, her reading glasses on, her laptop open. Across from her on the coffee table sat the remnants of Mitchell's dinner, a half-eaten plate of rice and the small container of tteok Mitchell had brought home saying she was saving it for tomorrow. Her phone buzzed. It was her creative director calling about the gala. The venue confirmed the stage setup, he said without preamble. You are 3rd on the award list. After the opening performances. Good, Rekhyul said. What is the guest count? 512. Biggest one yet. Half the room is investors, finance, tech, automotive. Automotive, Rekhyul repeated, something shifting quietly in her mind. She had been thinking about KT Motors for 2 weeks. About Kang Taeho and the Arya project. She had read the quiet reports, the kind that did not make headlines but circulated in the spaces where real money moved. She had thought about making a call. She had not yet decided. Rekhyul. I am here, she said. Send me the final guest list tomorrow morning. She hung up and sat for a moment in the amber quiet of the penthouse. Then a small sound from the hallway. The particular sound of small feet attempting to be sneaky and failing. Mitchell, Rekhyul said without turning around. A pause. Then. How did you know? Because you breathe louder when you are trying to be quiet. Rekhyul turned and looked at her daughter. Mitchell was standing in the hallway in her pajamas, deep purple silk with gold piping along the collar, her hair loose around her shoulders, her gold bracelet still on her wrist because she never took it off. You are supposed to be asleep. I was thinking, Mitchell said, walking forward and climbing onto the sofa beside her mother with the complete confidence of a child who has never once been made to feel unwelcome in her mother's space. About what? About Nari's dad. Rekhyul looked at her. What about him? Is he going to be okay? Careful pause. Why are you asking about him, baby? Because Nari is sad, Mitchell said simply. And Nari is sad because his dad is sad. And his dad is sad because of his business. She looked at her mother with eyes that were 5 years old and somehow older. You said he built something extraordinary. Rekhyul studied her daughter for a long moment. I did say that, she said quietly. Then why is nobody helping him? The question sat in the room between them, clean and unanswerable in the way that children's questions sometimes are, because they cut straight to the part adults have been carefully avoiding. Rekhyul reached out and smoothed Mitchell's hair back from her forehead. Sometimes, she said slowly, extraordinary things need the right moment, the right room, the right voice. Mitchell was quiet for a second. Like the gala, she said. Rekhyul blinked. How do you know about the gala? Mitchell just looked at her. Rekhyul shook her head slowly. You listen too much. You talk too loud, Mitchell said. And Rekhyul, composed, powerful, commanding Rekhyul Brit laughed. A full, real laugh that filled the penthouse and bounced off the floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the glittering Seoul skyline. She pulled Mitchell into her side. Go to sleep, she said. We will talk tomorrow. Mitchell rested her head against her mother's arm. Mom, she said quietly. I promised Nari forever. Rekhyul was still for a moment. I know, baby, she said softly, like she understood something Mitchell did not yet have words for. Is forever a long time? The longest, Rekhyul said. Mitchell considered this. Good, she said, and closed her eyes. The night of the Seoul Luxury and Innovation Gala arrived the way important nights always do. dressed in something spectacular and completely indifferent to the nerves of the people inside it. The Grand Hyatt Seoul had been transformed. Every surface that could hold light held it. Crystal arrangements caught the chandelier glow and threw it across the walls in fractured diamonds. The tables were dressed in deep ivory linen with black and gold centerpieces, calla lilies and dark orchids arranged with a kind of deliberate precision that cost more per table than most people's monthly rent. 512 guests moved through the space in their finest. Industry titans, cultural architects, investors whose signatures could rebuild or bury an entire sector overnight. It was exactly the kind of room that changed things. Rekhyul Britt entered it like she had built it herself. She wore a floor-length gown in deep crimson, structured at the shoulders, fluid from the waist down, with a neckline that was elegant and absolute. Her jewelry was minimal and devastating. A single strand of black diamonds at her throat, matching drops at her ears and on her wrist, a gold cuff that caught the light every time she moved. Her hair was swept into a sculptural updo with 2 loose coils framing her face. Her makeup was precise. Her heels were 4 inches and silent on the marble floor. She looked like someone who had already won before the evening began. Beside her, holding her hand with the grip of someone on a mission, was Mitchell. Mitchell was in a white dress, but not the soft, forgettable white of a child dressed to stay clean. This was structured ivory silk with a high collar, delicate gold embroidery along the hem and cuffs, and a full skirt that moved when she walked like it had somewhere important to be. Her hair was in 2 elegant buns threaded with gold ribbon. Her bracelet was on her wrist. Her small white leather shoes had gold buckles. She looked like someone who also had already won. What Rekhyul did not yet know was that her daughter had spent 45 minutes on the phone with Nari that afternoon. The call had happened in Mitchell's bedroom, door closed, Mitchell sitting cross-legged on her bed in her robe while her hair was still being done, the phone pressed between her ear and her shoulder. "Are you sure about this?" Nari had asked. His voice was careful, cautious in the way 7-year-olds become cautious when they have been disappointed enough times to know that plans do not always survive contact with reality. "I am sure," Mitchell said. "But what if they do not listen?" "They will listen." "How do you know?" "Because," Mitchell said, with the complete certainty of someone who had never once considered the possibility of being ignored, "I am going to make them." A silence. "Mitchell," Nari said quietly, "you do not have to do this." "I know I do not have to," she said. "I want to. Your dad built something extraordinary. My mom said so. And if my mom said so, then the people in that room need to know." Another silence. Longer this time. "My dad does not know," Nari said. "Good," Mitchell said. "It is a surprise. What if your mom gets angry?" Mitchell thought about this for exactly 2 seconds. "She will not be angry," she said. "She might be shocked, but she will not be angry. She does not get angry at things that are true." Nari exhaled slowly on the other end of the phone. Mitchell could hear him thinking. That particular Nari silence that she had already learned in just 2 weeks of friendship meant he was not disagreeing. He was just arranging his courage. "Okay," he said finally. "Okay," she confirmed. "I will tell you everything tomorrow." "Mitchell." "Nari." "Thank you." She did not say "you are welcome," because it did not feel like the right response. Instead she said, "That is what forever means," and hung up. The award ceremony began at 8:30. Rekhyul sat at the head table, composed and radiant, exchanging words with the guests around her with the ease of someone who had learned long ago how to be fully present in a room while also thinking 3 conversations ahead. Mitchell sat beside her, back straight, hands folded in her lap, watching the room with those quiet, absorbing eyes that missed nothing. The first award was given to a tech entrepreneur, who spoke for 4 minutes in Korean and 2 in English. The second went to a sustainability architect whose acceptance speech made 3 people at the back table cry. Then the host, a sharp-suited man with excellent diction, stepped to the microphone and said, "Our next honoree needs very little introduction. She has redefined what it means to influence, to build, and to lead across cultures. Ladies and gentlemen, Rekhyul Britt." The room rose. 500 people on their feet. The applause was not polite, it was genuine, the kind of sound a room makes when it recognizes someone who has actually done the work. Rekhyul stood, smoothed her gown, pressed her lips together in a small, composed smile. She leaned down to Mitchell. "Stay here," she said softly. Mitchell looked up at her. "Okay, mommy," she said. Rekhyul walked to the stage. She was 3 steps from the microphone when she felt it. A small presence at her side. She turned her head. Mitchell was there. Racheel's eyes went wide by exactly 1 fraction. The look she gave her daughter said several things simultaneously, none of which Mitchell acknowledged because Mitchell was already looking at the microphone with the focused expression of someone who had rehearsed this moment 45 times in her bedroom mirror. Mitchell, Raquel said low and urgent. But Mitchell had already reached up. The microphone stand was too tall. For one brief second the room watched a small girl in ivory silk and gold embroidery stretch onto her toes, both hands extended. A man at the front table, instinctively kindly, leaned over and lowered the stand. Mitchell took the microphone. The room went completely silent. Not the silence of confusion. The silence of 500 powerful people suddenly and collectively holding their breath. Mitchell stood at the microphone. She looked out at the room. At all those faces, all that wealth, all that influence, and she did not flinch. Not once. She stood the way her mother had taught her to stand, the way she had watched Raquel stand 1,000 times. Spine straight. Chin level. Eyes forward. "Good evening," she said. Her voice came through the speakers small and clear and entirely unbothered. Several people at the back tables leaned forward. "My name is Mitchell. I am 5 years old. And I have something important to say." At the head table, Raquel Britt stood 2 feet behind her daughter. One hand pressed lightly over her mouth, her black diamond bracelet catching the stage light. Her eyes were doing something complicated. "I have a friend," Mitchell continued. "His name is Nari. He is 7 and he is my best friend. His father's name is Kong Tae-ho. He built a company called KT Motors and he made electric cars that are very good. My mom said he built something extraordinary." She paused. "Let that land. But some people stopped helping him. And now his business is struggling. Inari is sad. And I do not think that is right." The room was so quiet that the calla lilies could have been heard growing. "My mom," Mitchell said, turning slightly to look at Raquel with complete, trusting certainty, "is the best influencer in the world. She knows what is good and what is worth it. And she said Kong Tae-ho built something extraordinary." She turned back to the room. "So I think you should help him. Because my mom is never wrong about what is worth it. And because Nari needs his dad to be okay." She lowered the microphone. And then because she was 5 years old and had said everything she came to say, she walked calmly back to Racheel's side, took her mother's hand and waited. The room was still for 3 full seconds. Then a man at table 7, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, the kind of investor whose presence alone moved markets, began to clap. Slowly. Then others joined. Then the room was standing again. But this time the sound was different from before. Warmer. Fuller. The sound of 500 people who had just watched something they would describe at dinner tables for the next 20 years. Raquel looked down at her daughter. Mitchell looked up at her mother. "Are you angry?" Mitchell asked quietly beneath the applause. Raquel shook her head slowly. Her eyes were bright. "No, baby," she said. "I am not angry." "Good," Mitchell said, and smoothed her skirt. By the time Raquel finished her acceptance speech, which she pivoted entirely, gracefully, and with devastating intelligence into a 3-minute endorsement of KT Motors and Kong Tae-ho's vision for sustainable automotive technology in Asia, 4 people had already left the room to make phone calls. By midnight, Tae-ho's assistant had received 6 investor inquiries. By morning there were 11. Kong Tae-ho heard about it at 6:45 in the morning. He was standing in his kitchen in a white linen shirt and dark trousers, coffee in hand, when his assistant called. He listened without interrupting for 4 minutes. Then he sat down slowly on the kitchen stool and said nothing for a long time. "Sir," his assistant said carefully. "Who?" Tae-ho said. His voice was quiet. "Who did this?" "The influencer. Raquel Britt." And a pause, her daughter. A 5-year-old. At the microphone. Tae-ho set his coffee down. He thought about Nari's voice on the phone 2 nights ago. She said her mom thinks you built something extraordinary. He thought about a small girl on a bench sharing her lunch. He thought about his son, who had been standing behind a cherry tree trying not to cry and had somehow found a friend who saw him anyway. His eyes burned. He pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of his nose and breathed. "Get me Raquel Britt's contact," he said finally. "I need to call her." The call between Tae-ho and Raquel lasted 22 minutes. It was not the call either of them had expected to make, him, Because he was a man who had spent the last 6 months receiving calls that took things away, not offered them. Her, because she had spent the morning fielding questions from her team about the speech she had never planned to give, delivered by a 5-year-old she had told to stay seated. I owe you an apology, Taeho said when she picked up. For what? Rekhyul said. My son and your daughter apparently made a plan without telling either of us. A beat. Then Rekhyul laughed. The same full, unguarded laugh that had filled the penthouse 2 nights ago. Mr. Kong. I think we were both outmaneuvered by children. Taeho, he said. Please. And yes. Completely outmaneuvered. Rekhyul, she said. And for what it is worth, what Mitchell said was not wrong. I have followed KT Motors for a while. What you built with the Arya project was not a failure. It was ahead of its time. Pause on his end. The particular pause of a man receiving something he had stopped expecting. I have made some calls this morning, Rekhyul continued, her tone shifting into the register she used when she was being a CEO rather than a mother. I would like to formally attach Sable's brand influence to the KT Motors relaunch campaign. If you are open to it. Why? Taeho asked. Not ungratefully. Genuinely. Because your son is my daughter's best friend, Rekhyul said simply. And Mitchell does not choose people carelessly. Apparently neither do I. Another pause. Then, thank you, Rekhyul. Do not thank me, she said. Thank your son. He found the right friend. 20 years later. Seoul had changed. And it had not. The Han River still moved through the city with the same unhurried certainty. The cherry trees still bloomed every spring. The Hanguk International Academy still sat between its glass building and its garden. And in the middle of the courtyard, a wooden bench still caught the afternoon sun. Nobody had removed it. Some things survive not because they are maintained but because they mean something to the people who remember them. Kong Nari was 27 years old. He stood at 6'1" in a charcoal single-breasted suit so precisely cut it looked architectural. His shirt was white, his tie a deep burgundy silk, his shoes the same polished Oxford style he had worn since he was 7 years old. A habit so ingrained it had become signature. His face had sharpened into the bones his father had given him, serious and structured, but with something warmer underneath that only certain people got to see. He was standing in the lobby of KT Motors headquarters, now a gleaming 40-floor tower that had become one of the most recognized buildings on the Gangnam skyline, holding a single cream-colored envelope. His assistant appeared at his elbow. Your 10 o'clock is here, sir. Tell them 5 minutes. Nari said. He had not looked away from the envelope. His assistant hesitated. Is everything all right? Yes, Nari said. And then quieter. She is coming home. Mitchell Britt stepped off the plane at Incheon International Airport in a camel wool coat with structured shoulders, a cream-ribbed turtleneck underneath, wide-leg caramel trousers and nude-pointed heels. Her hair was in a low, sleek bun at the nape of her neck with 2 deliberate face-framing pieces left loose. Her gold bracelet, the one engraved "You Are Enough," was on her left wrist where it had always been. Her carry-on was butter leather. She was 25 years old and she moved through Incheon the way her mother moved through every room, like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. She had been in New York for 3 years, building her own career in brand strategy and cultural consulting, working beneath no one's shadow including her mother's, making a name that was entirely her own. She had done well. She had been focused. She had also spent 3 years telling herself that the thing she felt every time Nari's name appeared on her phone was simply friendship. Old deep childhood friendship. She had almost believed it. Welcome back to Seoul, the immigration officer said, stamping her passport. Thank you, Mitchell said. It is good to be home. She meant it. She always meant it when she said Seoul. Something about the city fit around her differently than anywhere else. She had never fully examined why. She knew why. She just had not said it out loud yet. They met at the bench. Not by accident. By agreement. A message from Nari 3 weeks ago that said simply, "You are coming back. The bench is still there." Same time. She had stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Same time. He was already there when she arrived. Sitting the way he always sat. Slightly forward, elbows on knees, watching the cherry trees with that particular Nari stillness that had always made her feel like the world slowed down a little in his presence. He heard her heels on the stone path and turned. They looked at each other across 3 feet of courtyard air and 20 years of everything. You are late, he said. 3 years late, she agreed, and sat down beside him. The bench held them the same way it always had. Solid. Unhurried. Like it had been waiting. You look different, Nari said. I am different, Mitchell said. So are you. Good different or. Good different, Nari. A silence. Comfortable the way only the silences of people who have known each other across a lifetime can be. How is your father? She asked. Good. Great actually. The Aria relaunch cross-projections last quarter. He is talking about expanding into Europe. A small pause. He asks about you still. Your mom too. They became good people for each other, Mitchell said softly. The best kind of friends, Nari agreed. No complications. Just real. Mitchell looked at the cherry trees. A few late blossoms still held on, pink against the pale sky. Nari, she said. Mitchell. I need to tell you something. I know, he said quietly. She turned to look at him. He was already looking at her, with those eyes that had been red at the edges the first day she found him, that had watched her climb onto her toes at a microphone in front of 500 people, that had found her on a screen from across an ocean for 3 years and said everything in the pauses between conversation. You know, she said. I have known, he said. Since you were 5 years old and you moved over on the bench to make room for me without even asking my name first. Mitchell stared at him. That is a long time to know something, she said. Yes, he said. It is. Why did you not say anything? Because, Nari said, you needed to know it yourself first. I was not going to tell you something that was yours to find. Mitchell looked at him for a long quiet moment. Then she extended her hand between them. Her left hand, gold bracelet on her wrist catching the sole afternoon light, the same way it had caught the sunlight on a bench 20 years ago when she was 5 years old and had decided, without fully understanding what she was deciding, that this boy was hers to keep. Friends forever, she said. Something crossed his face. Warm and certain and 20 years deep. He reached out, wrapped his pinky around hers. Forever, he said. Epilogue. The wedding. The most breathtaking wedding Seoul had ever seen took place on a Saturday in April, when the cherry trees were at their fullest and the petals came down like the city itself had dressed for the occasion. Mitchell wore ivory, structured architectural, with a cathedral train and gold embroidery along every edge that caught the light when she moved. Her bracelet was on her wrist. Her mother's black diamond earrings were at her ears. Her hair was down for the first time at a formal event, loose, full, magnificent. Nari wore a white double-breasted suit with gold buttons and a burgundy silk pocket square. His shoes were polished Oxfords. He stood at the altar the way he had always stood, still and certain and completely present. Kong Taeho sat in the front row in a deep navy suit, his eyes bright, watching his son wait for the woman who had saved everything when she was 5 years old and had no idea what saving meant. Rekil Britt walked her daughter down the aisle in a floor-length champagne gown, her gold cuff on her wrist, her composure perfect until exactly 3 steps from the altar when it was not perfect anymore, and she did not try to pretend otherwise. She kissed Mitchell's forehead. Then she looked at Nari. Take care of her, she said softly. I have been taking care of her, Nari said, since she moved over on the bench. Rekil pressed her lips together, nodded once, and sat down beside Taeho, who handed her a handkerchief without being asked. The officiant spoke. The vows were said. And when it was done, when Nari reached for Mitchell's hand at the altar the way he had reached for her pinky on a bench 20 years ago, the room understood that this had never really been a love story that began with attraction or accident or fate. It had begun with a small brown hand moving over on a bench. It had begun with a small brown hand moving over on a bench. It had begun with, you can sit here if you want. It had begun with a promise made by children who had no idea how large forever actually was. They knew now. Some promises are made by children and kept by destiny. You just finished Black Silk Story's first drop. And if this story moved you, shook you, or made you feel something you were not expecting, then you are exactly where you are supposed to be. Black Silk Stories is the home of Afro-Korean stories that hit different stories that cross oceans, break boundaries, and remind you that love has no single language. Subscribe right now. Leave a comment below, we read every single one. Share this with someone who needs a story like this. Black Silk Stories.